I used to actually go in and take the tour of the Ryman when I was looking for inspiration, because I was so just downtrodden and discouraged and 18 and so far from my home and my country. I came from Canada. Everything was so different and scary for me and lonely for a while. I would go in there and just soak in that energy and that history, and it would remind me of why I went through all of that and why I made the sacrifice to be here. I'm Terri Clark, and this is Famous with Jacy Valeras.
Terri Clark, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I am such a fan. The first time I ever met you was on the red carpet at the Concert for Love and Acceptance. We were there supporting Ty Herndon and all the incredible work that he does. So I wanted to ask you about red carpets. Is this something that you enjoy doing still at this stage of your career, or is it kind of daunting to have to bounce from outlet to outlet to outlet?
Well, I'm just happy anybody wants to see me and talk to me at this point, but it is a little bit, it's always felt a little awkward, you know, the standing and posing and turning and everybody snapping their cameras.
Yeah.
And it's very show busy, any kind of red carpet situation. And but I love talking to people. It's great. I mean, it's a very effective way of getting a message across, or talking to media about whatever you're there for at that particular moment, or filling them in on what you've got going on right now too.
Yeah. Canada seems to be this huge hub right now for country music. I mean, Tenille Townes and Lizzie L, there are so many incredible artists coming out of Canada. You were one of the first, I think, to really put Canada on the mark for talent. So when you were growing up, your mom taught you how to play music. Who were some of the country artists that you started out listening to, or was it not even country music?
Well, my mom was kind of into that folk scene of the 60s and 70s. She listened to a lot of Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, Janis Joplin. So, but her parents were country music professional musicians in clubs. So I got a little bit of both growing up, which I'm really happy about, because I think it does contribute to your diversity as an artist, and the deeper the well, the better. So. But she taught me my first 3 chords when I was about 9 or 10 on the guitar. And then I kind of took it from there and discovered the Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters show on TV, which peeled a whole other layer away for me. And I started to really investigate country music and what was happening in the early 80s when I was that age, when I was like a very young teenager. So I heard Reba McEntire and just fell in love with her voice and her records. And I spent all my allowances on magazines like Country Rhythms and Country Music Roundup magazine, and you know, just really diving in deep, and loved Ricky Skaggs, the Judds. Oh, when the Judds came out, it was all over for me. So that early 80s era of country music was big in my formative years, but then I also went back to Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, you know, Hank Williams, and did a little deep dive there as well when I was a kid.
I know, like you said, your mom was one of your early believers. Did you have somebody outside of your family that was encouraging you to try and make a go for this?
A lot of the local musicians around Medicine Hat, Alberta, which is where I grew up and really got into country music. I entered some of the local talent shows and talent contests. Our local TV show had like a showcase thing they would showcase a local talent, and I got to get up and sing with a house band on that. And they, of course, it's local TV, they repeated a million times, and I became more popular at school, which was awesome. But yeah, so local musicians, people on the local level, friends, you know, and I often tell people when they're asking for advice, I say, don't listen to your relatives, because they're never going to be truly honest with you. But my mom was pretty honest. She was a great coach. She was a great mentor. And somebody that I really depended on to tell me the truth. And that was important. And then after I moved to Nashville, I developed relationships with other people in the industry that had, you know, that had experience and time in the industry that I hadn't had quite yet, that I took mentorship from and really looked up to and listened to.
I know one of your first early jobs was at Tootsies. And I feel like if you come up in this town working on Broadway, singing on Broadway, you have a story about either running into a celebrity or something like that. I know when I first moved to town, I was singing and I got asked to jump up on the stage at Tootsies, and Eddie Montgomery and Troy Gentry were in the corner. oh my goodness, like total heart attack, right?
Oh.
But they came over and they put $100 in my tip jar.
Awesome.
And that was my first entry into this town. And I'm like, it's so cool. Do you have a story like that? Any kind of cool thing that happened to you?
I don't think I have a $100 story. I think I made maybe $100 a week when I played there. The era that I played at Tootsies was 1987, 88, 89, 90. And it was a very different environment on Lower Broadway. And, you know, it was sort of abandoned. A lot of the buildings were boarded up, and we didn't have all the neon and all the bars and all the tourists and the pedal taverns and the bachelorette parties. It was almost like a very, I don't know what kind of word to describe. It had been forgotten and become a little on the seedier side, and a lot of people just didn't want to frequent Lower Broadway, especially at night. They stayed away from it at night, where now I stay away from it at night for an entirely different reason.
Same here.
Because there's nowhere to park.
So true.
But yeah, it was a very different environment, but I had some really interesting characters cross my path.
Yeah.
Guys that were just trying to make it, you know, the heartbreak stories, the songwriters that were living in their vans on the street and gave it all up to come to Music City to chase their dream. And it was a really interesting time. I would not give that time up for anything. There could have been a movie done about that time in country music down on Lower Broadway, and the folks that I would run into and the kind of characters that, you know, everyone had an angle.
Yeah.
It's like, I'll make you a star. Here's my business card. That kind of deal, you know. It's just like, you're living in your car. How are you going to help me?
That's awesome. Well, behind Tootsies, some people may not know, is a little pathway that leads to the backstage at the Ryman. And you just had a giant dream come true when you headlined at the Ryman Auditorium. Talk a little bit about that night, now that you've had a minute to let it settle in you. Is there something from that experience as a whole that you look back on and say, that's the snapshot in my mind?
That's the show of my life. It was not only the snapshot in my mind. I think if somebody tells me when I'm 95 or 100, hopefully I live that long and about to leave this world, what was the most memorable show you ever have done in your career, looking back on all of them. And I mean, other than the show that they asked me to become an Opry member at, I would say that Ryman headlining spot was the highlight. And I've recently been so fortunate to get to play the Hollywood Bowl in Madison Square Garden, some really prestigious venues. But that one, because it's right across from Tootsie's where I started, and I used to actually go in and take the tour of the Ryman when I was looking for inspiration, because I was so just downtrodden and discouraged and 18 and so far from my home and my country. I came from Canada. Everything was so different and scary for me and lonely for a while. I would go in there and just soak in that energy and that history, and it would remind me of why I went through all of that and why I made the sacrifice to be here, and encourage me to live that dream and keep going with it. So to get to headline there, 30 something years after that was unbelievable. And it was packed. I mean, the fans that came from all over the United States that didn't have a meet and greet pass or a photo opportunity because the backstage is tight there. We didn't get to do that. They got nothing out of it but to be there for me. And that, I tell you, it really hit home with me how much those fans mean to me and how much I mean to them. I get teary every time I talk about this.
You're making me teary.
That they just showed up to be in that moment with me and share in the dream was, I'll never forget it. Stop. Yeah.
Speaking of your fans, somewhere between Tootsies and the Ryman, you became famous. Do you remember the first moment you realized that?
Wow. I was in a Taco Bell in Alabama, and Better Things to Do the video had just debuted. The song was barely out. Because back then, they would put a video out before they released a single, and they do it a little differently now. And somebody came up to me and asked me for my autograph. And I was like, is this really happening? Because they recognized me from TV. It wasn't because I was singing for tips at Tootsies and they were just, will you sign this just in case you get famous? Somebody actually recognized me from TV. And that was kind of like, oh my gosh, this is really happening. And then things like, performing on the Opry and just getting recognized for what I was doing and what I dreamed of doing was the, I still to this day don't feel like a famous person. I just don't put myself in that category in my brain. It doesn't really compute. So, but that was when I realized there was a certain amount of recognition going on, I guess.
Has there ever been a moment in your career where you wished you didn't have that, or that you had pursued something different?
No, not really, because I fly under the radar rather easily. You know, I very, very rarely get recognized if I'm not wearing this. If I don't have makeup on, I'm usually standing next to you in the produce department. You don't even know. I've walked past, honest to God, I'm not kidding you. I will do a headline show at a theater or something, and this happened last year, staying at the same hotel as some people that were at the show the night before. There was literally a woman holding the vinyl record she bought at the show the night before, waiting on her husband to pull their car around while I was standing right beside her, waiting on the runner van to come and get us and take us to the airport. She never realized I was standing next to her the entire time.
That's amazing. There are so many celebrities that can't do that, right?
Oh,
like they're
lots of
so
them.
recognizable. Like I always wonder, does Dolly go to Walmart? Because she would be hard to hide.
Well, the voice recognition with somebody like Reba and Dolly, there's no escaping that voice either. And they're just at another level altogether of celebrity. And I believe God gives you what you can handle. And I don't know how well I love being I like being off the radar and having a normal life, as normal as I can possibly get, and doing my own shopping and taking care of things myself, and running my own errands. I've heard Reba does that sometimes, and everybody goes, "You can't do that," but she tries. But I imagine that's very difficult for her.
How are you with fans coming up to you in public if they do recognize you?
Oh, I'm great with it, you know, and it happens so rarely, like I said, that I'm kind of like, oh, it kind of takes me by surprise when they do. It's when they want a picture. and I'm like,
you don't have
I just crawled out of the dog bed. But yeah.
That's amazing. I want to talk about Terri Clark Take Two, the new album, because you have some really special, amazing guests and friends that have joined you on that album. People like Lainey Wilson, Ashley McBride, Ben Rector, who I love. I want to ask you, for starters, putting that record together, did they have a say-so in what songs they were going to do with you? Were you the one who picked the songs? How did that all come to be?
It was kind of a combination of both of those things. I very pointedly asked Ashley to sing on Better Things to Do because she's, you know, publicly acknowledged how much my debut album meant to her and the image on the front and you know, encouraging her to pursue individuality and just being herself, you know, and that she related to all of that and the music. So it felt natural. And I knew her better than any of the other artists at that time on this record. So it felt natural. And then, you know, I wanted Lainey on Poor Pitiful Me because it's fun and it's feisty and it's, I just felt like it was a great marriage. And then, you know, a couple of the other folks on the record, I let them sort of dictate what they wanted to do. In that case, in the case of like Cody Johnson and Kelly Clarkson, they sort of handpicked those songs out of 2 or 3 choices, and I was really happy they did and the way it turned out. I mean, hearing my voice and Kelly Clarkson's voice on anything is surreal to me. It's crazy, and she's such a 90s country fan. And especially the women of 90s country, being from Texas, she grew up on all of us. So it's a tremendous honor to get to sing with a voice like hers. And Ben Rector, I would say the same thing. He's just one of the most talented guys on the planet. And they're the two kind of outside the country box artists on this project. But Cody, I mean, man, we were going back and forth between this one and that one. And then I Just Want to Be Mad, which we ultimately landed on. And he decided. I was so happy because this new version sounds like a whole different animal than the first one, where the woman is making all the, you know, all the decisions about how she's feeling and don't come near me until I'm ready to talk. This is 2 people in a relationship having a conversation about when they're going to be able to have a conversation. So, you know, it's not just one-sided, which I really loved about it. And musically, it took on a completely different direction. We tracked without Cody, but, you know, went in with the band and produced a track that we felt like he would be really happy with. And he was. And he came in and we, you know, dialed down on the lyric and where to split up the lyric.
Yeah.
And it became something really, really cool that we were both really happy with, and it sounded like a hit all over again.
Well, I mean, those songs are so timeless. It doesn't matter when they would be released or with who. I just feel like you've created such magic in your catalog of songs that all of these songs will live on forever, and they will always fit right in with whatever the current country music is. And I think that's such a testament to you and the songs that you've chosen to record in your career. I'm not going to make you pick a favorite, but do you have a favorite experience from recording that album that you look back on and just, love that special moment?
I think when I gave Lainey Wilson a vintage T-shirt from a bin of one of those big plastic bins, my mom kept one of everything for years in the 90s for me to set aside so that I would have them. And I started to dig through them, and I found the shirt that said "Poor, Poor, Pitiful Me" on the back of it from 1996. And I took it to Lainey and gave it to her as a gift when she came to do her vocal on the track. And she was just so genuinely sweet and blown away. She said, "Man, if 5-year-old Lainey knew that she," and I went, 5? Oh! But she said she was going to put it in a frame, put it on her wall. And she was just so sweet and humble about that. And I just, that's the last one. I don't have any more of those. So I'm passing the baton and passing on the merch. And I did the same thing with Ashley and Cody. And Cody looked at the shirt and he said, "I had this poster on my wall when I was 16. And I said, "That's far enough. We don't need to talk anymore about that."
Well, you've had the chance to tour and perform with so many of your own idols. When you look back on, touring with Brooks and Dunn, Reba, Toby Keith, people that you came up with, people that you admired, do you have a favorite memory of your own touring experience with them?
Oh gosh, boy, you're really.
I'm digging deep, Terri.
No,
okay?
No, I just have so many. It's hard for me to focus on one. Of course, I'm gonna jump to Toby because we just lost him.
Yeah.
And what a big brotherly type conversations we had, and about everything from touring to when do you think the fans are going to forget about me, and the window of time and financial things and business. And he's just, at one time he publicly, I saw an interview he did, and he said he thought I was one of the most underrated artists out there. And it meant so much to me to get his seal of approval, because one thing Toby didn't do was BS anybody.
Right.
Everything he said he meant. Just hanging out with him after shows, having those discussions and joking around and having a couple drinks and dips and all of it. I really, it's a tremendous loss to the industry. So I really cherish those moments with him. And I've had some really great ones with Reba. I've seen her do Jello shots here and there after shows.
You heard
playing
it here.
basketball, playing cornhole, great conversations, great hangs. We're all just real people that have an extraordinary job that we're very lucky to have, and we get together, and it's not all that different than anybody else.
Are you the kind of artist that will sit on the side of the stage and still learn from these other people, or do you feel like you have the ability to kind of tap into what other artists are doing and still absorb information?
Oh, I still absorb, definitely. I still ask for advice from Reba about certain things, and how she handles this or that. I'm like, what if you're not feeling very vocally, I've gone to her for a lot of advice about things over the years, and she's always got an answer, and it's short and it's sweet, and I'm like, okay, well, that's it. That's the answer.
That's amazing.
That's what I do. That's what I do.
I feel like a lot of the things in your life have been very full circle. If you could go back and talk to the young girl who learned to play when her mother taught her at such a young age, what would you tell her?
Oh, wow. You don't know this right now, but this is going to become a hobby, which is going to actually become a career where you're going to get to make a difference in a lot of people's lives, and it's going to change yours. And you're going to be able to do extraordinary things, have extraordinary experiences, and don't get caught up in the small stuff. When you get worried, just know everything's going to be okay. At the end of the day, that's what I would tell her.
That's amazing. You're going to make me cry here. This interview.
I know, right?
I want to thank you, Terri, so much for
Jacy.
taking the time to sit next to me. I've been a fan since I was a kid. I'm not going to say the age, but
Yeah, I know.
I grew up listening to your music, okay? And I am such a fan.
I'm
I love
embracing
you.
that now. It's okay. It's
Awesome.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jacy. It's so nice to be here.
Thanks. Terry's like, I'm never doing an interview with Jacy again.
No.
That's good.
Oh, we just got here and settled. And...
I feel like we almost coordinated or
Yeah, I
something.
know. I didn't think much about it.
Are you good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Think so. Max, fetch me my sedative. That's like, yeah, my favorite line.